GIS panel discussion with law enforcement officials. With me today, we have several people who have used GIS in law enforcement. If you tuned into some of the other panels, we've had military people dealing with COVID, emergency management, drone fly, people who pilot drones. This one is going to be focused on emergency and law enforcement and how law enforcement and how GIS sort of marry up together. My name is Nick Humphrey. I'm the GIS analyst in Montgomery County. I've been doing GIS for about 20 years now. I have 10 years of military service where I learned GIS, and my last duty station was actually teaching GIS. Since then, I've been in the oil and gas industry, government contractor working overseas, and now I work for the county government of Montgomery County. With us today, we have several different law enforcement officials and people that work hand in hand with law enforcement, either as liaisons or in the GIS Department of Law Enforcement of different police departments here in Texas. So I'm going to ask them to go ahead and introduce themselves. And I'll begin with Nicole Dogan, please. If you'd introduce yourself.
I'm Nicole Dogan. I work for the town of Flower Mound, which is part of the DFW Metroplex. I've been with the town for over 17 years. I came to GIS from telecom. I was originally at school and had a job with telecom and then moved into municipal GIS from there. And now I get to work predominantly with fire and police. So that's a really good extension of GIS for me.
Wonderful. Patrick, where are you from? What do you do?
Yep. Hi, my name is Patrick Alexander. I'm the GIS manager for the Houston Police Department. I've been with the department for about 13 years now and doing GIS for the past 9 with the department and been the manager for the last about 4 years. Originally from Copper Cove, Texas, but I came here from the military. I have a military background where I learned GIS like you, Nick. So I'm happy to marry what I learned in the service and law enforcement with GIS. So.
Wonderful. Thank you. Freddie, go ahead. Where have you been and what do you do?
I'm Freddie Croft. I am a lieutenant with the Houston Police Department. I joined HPD about 10 years ago, so I've been on for about 10 years. I picked up GIS about 3 years ago when I promoted to sergeant and then lieutenant. I was working in crime analysis, and GIS was one of the tools we used there just to do our daily functions. And once I started kind of diving into it, I saw the use case throughout the department was so much greater. And so I kind of went down that path and then joined the GIS unit about a year and a half ago. I'm from Houston. I work in Houston, live in Houston. And yeah, so it's been pretty fun.
Wonderful. Wonderful. DJ, a little bit about you.
Well, my name is Sergeant DJ Beaty with Dallas Police Department. I joined the department in 1991. Worked in various different assignments. I came to the crime analysis unit about 10 years ago as a senior corporal. And then from there, I promoted to sergeant, and now I'm one of 2 unit sergeants for GIS and our crime analysis team.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So now we'll get into some questions about how they use GIS in their, working with law enforcement. Nicole, can you explain some of the products and some of the stuff that maybe people have asked for from you in law enforcement? What do you work with GIS in law enforcement?
Okay. Part of the requirements are getting our data out from the GIS and getting it over to dispatch so that they're running on our streets and address points and able to respond when needed and dispatch sources. One of the really cool things we got to do in the last year was to create an app. So residents can go in and log where they have cameras around their house or building premises. And it doesn't give the police access to the footage, but it means that if an officer is dealing with an incident, they can look on the map and see who is around them that has cameras, and it gives them the contact details. So then they can contact the resident and ask for access to that footage. So it's helped them with dealing with crimes that way. Otherwise, for the most part, we're doing is event situational awareness and data gathering for that sort of thing.
Wonderful, wonderful. So Patrick, you work for the Houston Police Department. I know a few years ago the Super Bowl was here. what were some of the things that you did, you know, because I know the Super Bowl is a huge security risk, obviously. You know, were you working closely with the planners of the Super Bowl and things going on with that?
Yeah, so it's a great question. When the Super Bowl came to Houston, what was it, about maybe like 4 or 5 years now? I would say that GIS in the department was kind of at its infancy in a sense that we were basically doing desktop GIS. WebGIS hasn't really been fully developed within the department at that time, so we were just growing the unit and WebGIS at the department. So while we didn't have really a major footprint during the Super Bowl, we were there for planning purposes. We were kind of on the outside, on the edges, kind of saying, okay, this is what we can do when we finish standing up architecture and infrastructure to support the kind of you know, information products that we'll use for these type of large special events in the future. So we were like maybe a couple months away from actually being able to fully engage with that planning process, but it's a very long process for large events like that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I've worked with some of that in my other jobs, but yes, absolutely, it's wonderful. Fredrick, Freddie, what do you think where do you think GIS is going as far as law enforcement goes? I mean, you know, do you think the need for GIS is expanding in law enforcement, and what happens?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, we've really pushed to focus on WebGIS, which has allowed us to really give a greater access to information across the department to all levels. We've created applications everywhere from, you know, our chiefs and our executives to the brand new patrol officer who's first showing up in their beat that day. So it's really changed how and where, especially with our entire enterprise deployment, how officers can go out and get information that they always had to track down, and a lot of times it was kind of siloed off or gate kept. It's really just kind of inundated all across our department, and we've seen an exponential growth in use cases across our department too. We started with, you know, a simple website and then a few applications that just showed recent crime, and we have units coming to us wanting us to redo their entire database on how they track their internal stats. And because I mean, everything has a spatial component that, or at least most things that we're interested in, you know, time and place. And so giving users the ability to see that in that context without having to, you know, go and put it on a map and do this real big manual process where they can see it in real time is just change the game up. And so I see it really going across almost all of our database systems. As long as they have a spatial component to it, I think that that'll be the preferred way of viewing this information in the future.
Wonderful. DJ, you said you work in the crime analysis lab, correct? And so in that, you know, I'm sure I know our crime analysis lab in Montgomery County uses GIS quite frequently to track different people. How do you use it in your daily tasking?
In daily tasks, we use it, and much like what you said, to track people, to track crime patterns, trends, also to get a spatial component to the trends that are happening in what we call our hotspot areas that we've already identified. We use it to for each of our CompStat meetings, in addition to our weekly chiefs meetings. So it's really the driving decision-making factor for almost everything that we do.
Wonderful, wonderful. Nicole, Freddie said an interesting topic about data being siloed. Do you see that in some of the stuff that you do where sometimes people don't share stuff, and so you have people working in silos in your field?
Not in other towns, not at Flower Mound. At Flower Mound, we have an enterprise GIS. And so we work for the GIS staff work for the entire town. And so we produce the layers and then everybody gets to share them. So we definitely try not to silo the data. We've seen that in other places and really think it's a bad way of running. You end up doing duplicate work, and the whole point is to be getting your answers quicker and easier. So you make it as easy as possible and everybody shares everything. That being said, unless there's privacy information, then it's restricted to whoever needs it.
Right. And Patrick, you said that you joined the military and learned GIS through the military. What drew you to GIS?
Yeah, so one of the things was that I had to learn it based on the job that I was doing as an intelligence officer. But another thing is just basic land navigation, reading topographic maps with a protractor and compass. I mean, that to me was like the foundation where I just learned and loved maps and map reading. And then I wanted to consume everything I could about what makes a map and everything about what a declination diagram is and what's grid north and magnetic north and things like that. That kind of like snowballed into learning more and more about the greater field of GIS and how it goes into like cartography and map making. And it's just, as you know, it's a rabbit hole. And so it was just wonderful.
Yes. It is definitely a rabbit hole. Right. You said that you joined the Houston Police Department and sort of got into GIS later. You didn't join it for the GIS. What drew you to GIS?
Well, for me, it was really just the especially with our enterprise deployment, is just the versatility of it and being able to really see stuff in real time. The first project that I worked on was really just solving everyday problems that I had as a police officer. And so when I was at one of our divisions as a crime analysis sergeant, I created an application where it was all of our apartments, all of our multifamily dwelling. I worked in an area that was heavily, there was a ton of apartments, and we always found that it was hard to get into them because the gate codes would get outdated. The owners would change. We wouldn't know who to call. And then the site maps, even just finding the apartment. And so I just created an application, a layer where it had all the apartments footprints where officers could go in there and create little officer safety notes and upload the document that showed the outline of the layout of the apartment, and then update gate codes and things like that. So, and once I made that, it was like, oh wow, this could be really applied across everything. I mean, enabling crowdsourcing of our officers was huge, and we've already done that with a lot of our different applications going forward, because all of our officers have a computer in their car. So what better way to get them engaged than by giving them a way to give feedback? So that was really my foray into it. And since then, it's just been taken off, trying to solve all the other problems, or all the other challenges rather we have.
DJ, what brought you to GIS and to your position now?
Well, I actually was selected at the time for the position to go to GIS, and it started with some of the background I have in writing code in SQL and Python, and so once the chief, the division chief, knew that I could assist with some projects, and then it was asked to create reports, and from the reports you end up going to more visualization with maps and web applications, much like Fredrick mentioned. We also did the apartment complex footprints for the officers in the field, and had to go out and crowdsource and get that information from the apartment complexes and from officers. And some of the challenges that we had to overcome with that is updating and maintaining the data, because the names are changing and codes are changing, and we still struggle with that today. But to answer your question, I was basically selected, and once I've got into it, and I've maintained a presence here in the department with that, and earned my degree in GIS, and then from there now I end up being unit sergeant.
Wonderful. Nicole, what brought you to GIS? What inspired you to become a GIS analyst?
I did my undergraduate in resource and environmental management, and this was 20 years ago, and there was one GIS/remote sensing class. That was it at the whole university. And I ended up I married an airman and moved to the States, and so I took 3 classes here to pass back to finish my graduate. And the 3 classes I took were GIS classes, and I was older and a better student and did pretty well. And so I went from, once I graduated with my bachelor's, then I went on and did a graduate certificate, and then I moved into the master's. And I'm a geographer at heart. I like to know who, what, where, why, see how they all tie together, and the GIS just really helped me do that.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then one final question to everybody. We'll just go around and start with Nicole again. If somebody is interested in getting into GIS, A, would you suggest that they do it? And B, how would you suggest that they sort of start that process? We'll start with you, Nicole, if you don't mind.
I would say absolutely start that process if you're interested. Learn what you can, if you're about to head into college or community college, or start with whatever you can get your hands on. If you're not, you can look online and get online classes, find a mentor, ask around in your local network, at the school, at the university, find somebody to help you, to direct you, and then look at ways to apply it to whatever your passion is. If you're interested in law enforcement, then that's a really good way to look and see how GIS can benefit you. Whatever you're interested in, always looking to see how you can apply GIS, because it can go anywhere.
Absolutely. Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, Nicole hit it spot on. I would say learn as much as you can about the field of GIS. It's very wide ranging. And then find that one special area that you really like, but you still want to learn about all the other areas. It's nice to know kind of how like databases and architecture work. I mean, it is information systems after all. But if you love cartography and map making or spatial analysis, by all means, like dive into that. But you should probably try to learn a little about the entire field as possible. And then say about college, I would also say that by all means do GIS as a major, but if you have a passion for another field, do that as your minor. And so that way you can go into it with all the GIS knowledge that you have, and you can go into, like Nicole was saying about law enforcement, you can go in CJ as your minor. I would recommend doing that as opposed to doing criminal justice as your major. Do GIS as your major and then criminal justice as your minor. Being in the department for this long, we realized that you could really do any kind of degree, and law enforcement will take you. So I would say find your passion subject and go with that. And my final recommendation is to find a GIS association, and you could join that as a student as well. There's plenty of them out there. They have student rates, and it's really good to get your foot in the door with different type of free classes sometimes, and where you should go next. It's really great.
Wonderful. Fredrick, what do you think? Same sort of thing, or?
Yeah, I mean, without reiterating too much, I think they both hit it on the head. We're finding your passion. You know, the field touches everything. I mean, if you like drones, if you like, you know, or if you going into oil and gas and law enforcement, whatever it is, almost everything has a spatial component. So you can really utilize GIS across all industries. And for me, it's always been getting in and playing. You know, website design, graphic design, all those things. It's things that I just go in there and play with, and there's ways to do it for free. You know, there's free software out there. You can go and get a student account or a developer account, and just, you know, see how it can apply to what it is that you enjoy doing, and then just go, you know, following your interests.
Wonderful. DJ, any comments on this, or?
Yeah, I mean, like Fredrick also said, I mean, you need to find a passion in this. Trying to find the field that you want to be in. You know, if you're really interested in those geographic relationships between whatever that might be, whether it be crime or whatever the case is, you need to find that. And then you need to, you know, what I find is people need to stay relevant, because this is an ongoing, evolving science. And so people need to be sure and keep those skills up, that once you've got them, that you need to maintain those skills and then look to enhance those skills.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, you know, it is a diminishing skills field, and that if you don't stay relevant to it,
Right.
that it does
Quickly
slip away. Does anybody have any other comments as far as your field and law enforcement and GIS? If nothing more, we want to thank you all for watching. We want to thank our participants here today for being a part of this discussion. Thank you all for doing this. We really appreciate it. And it is true. We are very passionate about this field, and we hope that those that are watching today will also experience some of that passion. If it's in GIS, wonderful. If it's another field, just follow your passion. And I thank you for watching.